Why does waiting on a wish from the new live-action Snow White feel so wrong? On the surface, it seems to check off a lot of boxes when it comes to crafting a hit Disney song, but I wasn't feeling the magic, and I wasn't alone. A lot of you told me that you felt like something wasn't right, but you couldn't put your finger on what. So I'm here to help break down everything from the lyrics to the composition to the storytelling and explain how this song works, why it falls apart, and why how it falls apart matters so much. Because obviously, yes, we are gonna poke fun at some wonky word choices and some questionable composition, but that is not the biggest problem here. There is something crucial missing, a fatal mistake that they have made, and I'm flabbergasted that nobody at Disney noticed this because this mistake inadvertently perpetuates the very idea that they wanted to avoid with the live-action remake, and it's just so painfully ironic. This is Calxiyn here to make you care, brought to you by my patrons and my YouTube members who, in a world of it's not that deep, support me so I can show you that yes, it is that deep and it's fun to talk about why. In this video, you are not only gonna learn about technique or the mechanics of songwriting and how that influences storytelling, but also why emotionally, composition or lyrics can still fail even when they seem polished and perfect. Just like other art forms, musical theater songwriting has fundamentals, and this is so songwriters can deliver their stories with clarity championed above all else. And just like art, these fundamentals or rules can be broken or challenged, but think of it this way. There is a reason why you have never fucked with the Gummy Garage in Kingdom Hearts. In theory, you could make some pretty unique or innovative designs, but 99% of the people that go in there somehow come out with an abomination that has no guns. Music is communication, and songs are a mode of delivery for meaning and story. But if the vessel sinks before it can reach us, the message doesn't reach us either, and the song falls flat. So what are the mechanical issues that I found with this song? Is it as bad as Moana 2? As bad as Wish? What I will say is even though I have personal beef with Pasek and Paul, I expect a lot more from them compared to Julia Michaels, and so the oddities of this song stand out a lot more. Because some sections are so polished, when things get clunky or stupid, it's a lot more obvious. It's like eating a cake that is perfectly baked in some spots, but burnt or still runny in others, and you wonder how one could even fuck up in such a specific way. The composition here is exactly that. Perfect in some spots and burnt and runny in others. When I talk about a masterpiece on this channel, I get to go through the song section by section and talk about all the little things in the composition that I love. But we haven't done that in 5 months. What immediately ruined this song for me was the goddamn plucking. I felt like there was a ping pong ball being batted around between my ears. Now, other than just being annoying, there are a few reasons why this does not work for me and potentially also does not work for you. And it's not just like, oh, pop music bad. Like, I actually think, though it still hits me pretty violently, I would like to hear from you guys if it hit you in that way too. Even despite that, I feel like we could retool it into an Asha song and have it make a lot of sense. But when it comes to Snow White, soundscapes are important. It's how we differentiate characters like the Beast or Ariel or Rapunzel, and the original Snow White orchestra never had a soundscape like this. This is so aggressively Greatest Showman and like post-tangled modern. And this stupid fuck-ass beat is so prominent that it reduces the impact of what should have been a softer and intimate moment. It went to the Pasek and Paul school of private and quiet, which is to say not at all. Even though, as you guys know, I am a sucker for the violins, and a violin can be added in anything and usually improve my opinion, and something interesting does happen after the sharing secrets with a stone, where we get something that's really twisty, melodically and instrumentally to showcase like the pain and the heartbreak, and that made me really excited for a minute. It does not grow in a meaningful way, and we get this stupid strumming again.
Sharing secrets with a stone. My Holy Father.
If you listen to the song in full, you'll notice at the start, it's like they only let in that classic Disney sound in between when she's singing, not while she's singing. I liked the instrumentation more as the song went on, but it sounds like this started as a Wish song and then suddenly midway through they were like, oh yeah, we're writing for Snow White, we forgot. By the time we got to verse 3, the song started to give like, you're a fairy running away from an arranged marriage, like a song in one of those playlists, you know what I'm talking about, right? And usually I'd be like, fuck yeah, but it does not work for me here, especially when the beginning was more like girl in her room with her guitar, compared to verse 3, which is like, I am a bard and I'm going into battle. I'm really confused as to why they would do this and use this as such a strong anchor when it's so out of place. It will ultimately date the movie because it has a very specific, again, The Greatest Showman era type musical theater sound. But the other thing is that we associate Snow White with nature. Some instruments just sound more natural than others. Like, I want the vibe that like someone carved a flute out of wood, like out of a tree, you know what I mean? But if that's not what bothered you, don't worry, because there is a bigger problem, and this is where I'm gonna reveal a Disney songwriting secret. Have you ever noticed that even if the music starts before the character starts to sing, the song waits for them to go?
I've been staring at the edge of the water.
How a world that makes such wonderful things could be bad. Look at this stuff.
Sometimes I feel like I really don't belong here.
I have often dreamed.
I feel like what the corporate machine has wrung out of Pasek and Paul's minds is that in a musical, the music manifests from the character and will react to what the character is singing about. I call this fundamental musical theater reactivity. And this level of dynamic change is what makes musicals special. But the aggressive plucking here causes a sense of drive, without the character being responsible for it. And the violins also start before she's singing. No other instrument is added in. She just sings on top of what is already happening. So it feels like that the song didn't start because of Snow White, and it would go on without her if she wasn't there. And that's why this sounds like the pop version of the Disney song that plays as the credits roll. And this has to be the worst part. If you will notice, in I'm Wishing, the music does stop. When Snow White pauses, it pauses too.
Oh well, that's all you have to do. And if you hear it echoing, your wish.
That is a major contributor to its immediate uncanniness. Disney music has its own semiotic signs that we unconsciously recognize and associate with Disney, but the song already fumbles the iconic elements of Disney music and the world of Snow White's music itself. This is going to be my first fix out of many, so let me know in the comments what you guys think. But I say let Snow White start singing a cappella so the audience gets a sense of the emptiness she feels. It may not be good for the radio, but that's why we used to have radio versions and we don't sacrifice the timelessness of a song just so we can go viral on TikTok. Imagine how impactful it would have been if she had started singing that first line and the world was completely silent. And then we could slowly start adding the instruments to respond to her, like an oboe maybe for that more natural sound, or a sad piano that sounds like it's the dripping water in the well or the well rippling. And we can keep the tragic violins that are going on in the back. I really like how gentle her vocals sound here, but her voice and the intimacy of that feels at odds with the instrumentation. Now, compared to Wish, where there was no interesting instrumentation and the songs were stuck at this bored 50% constantly, I will say that this song evolves and grows instrumentally as it continues. When this played in the first chorus, did anybody else think about Barbie as Rapunzel?
Waiting on a wish, holding out for someday.
This sounded really natural and princessy, but I got annoyed when the strumming came back. As I said, it got better as it went on. I just don't like that at the beginning, it seems as though every time somebody tried to do that classic Disney sound, they were tossed in the dungeon under Magic Kingdom. My favorite part instrumentally was definitely the bridge because we had these strong, royal, heroic type instruments, and this type of sound is something we only typically get with Quasimodo or Hercules, not really with the princesses. I suppose that Moana is a bit of an outlier, but I have mentioned this grievance in other videos, and it goes both ways. Like, for example, in these two videos, I mentioned that Alan Menken wrote a song for Hercules. It was very personal, very sweet, very intimate, but somebody thought it lacked muscularity, and so they went back and they rewrote it. Even though it is stupid, there's still these ideas of masculine and feminine sound. Like, you'll notice a lot of the Disney princesses, their songs trail off sadly, you know, Ariel, Pocahontas, like it's a classic sort of trope. I have wanted a heroic sounding princess song for so long, and this almost did heal my inner child, even though I still have beef with them making a legit soprano role a belter role, and the Idina Menzelification of it all. I talked about that in this video. But just when I thought I could ignore the weird beginning, just when I thought, let's fucking go, fine, I can tolerate it as long as we get this, they ruined it. The echo, echo, echo. I felt betrayed when this happened. Like, this is absolutely criminal. In the original I'm Wishing, you'll notice that the echoes actually sound like they're coming from the well. In the 1930s, in Disney's first animated movie.
I'm wishing.
Is let it echo, 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 echo. But this is just so crispy, and it's this aggressive, again, Greatest Showman, pop music-y convention, and I was so mad! Obviously, it's not like when Ariel or Sebastian sing, they have this underwater effect on their voices. Like, I'm not asking for that level of realism, that would be silly, but there are compositional tricks to accomplish the idea of atmosphere in space, and vocals are occasionally given an impacted effect if the song calls for it. Think about in Hunchback, for example, that ensemble sounds like they are in the church, and Esmeralda has a prominent reverb in comparison to other Disney princess songs. Here's a question that everybody working on a musical movie should be asking themselves. Think to yourself, if you did this on stage, would it be completely fucking stupid? If the answer is yes, don't do it. Given some of the shots, I wouldn't be surprised if it's similar to Speechless, where it's basically a music video. Jasmine is singing and no one is reacting to her, just like these guards apparently don't react to Snow White. Can we talk about this Vivo video for a second though? Because what the fuck happened? When the song just suddenly ended, I was so confused. Luckily, I found the full version, but this would be like if Disney Vivo stopped We Don't Talk About Bruno after they yell time for dinner, and they just cut the climactic ending. It doesn't make any sense, and if it was a matter of length, again, that's why we make a radio version. At least give us something to finish us off.
But I'm still waiting here, waiting on a wish.
Either the Vivo version is accurate, and what I used for this video is not Waiting on a Wish, but actually Waiting on a Wish plus the reprise that has been reported is going to happen, or Vivo just stopped the song midway through for no reason. It wasn't over yet. If the Vivo ending is real, that literally sounds so unfinished and unprofessional. If the 5-minute one is the real ending, we surprisingly got some like Kingdom Hearts-esque orchestration here going into this next part, but there are some major lyrical and storytelling blunders here, so I can't even enjoy the finished version either. So my verdict on the composition is that it sounds like midway through they changed the character they were writing for and did their best to just salvage it superficially. After my Snow White video, some of you requested that I sing this song in a higher key and make it into a legit soprano song, but I need to commission an instrumental to fix all the beef I have with it or I will crash out. And I do think that it's worth rescuing, but it's almost more frustrating compared to any of my Wish videos because every time we reach a moment that I actually enjoyed and a moment that I could see myself performing, it's like they thought, like, remember, audiences don't like musicals and they had to pull us back kicking and screaming into pop music land. Despite all my issues with the composition in a vacuum, it can't take all the blame here. Instrumentation should ultimately be informed by the lyrics, and so now we have to get into the technical issues with those. I am happy to say, though, that after 26 videos on this channel, this may be the first time where I have ripped into a song and I have not had a problem with a single rhyme. Unlike Wish and Moana 2, where multiple times I was contemplating abandoning civilization and running into the woods, when this song has slant rhymes, I think they're used well, like hide and find. It's not egregious at all. And when the song uses perfect rhymes, they feel natural to how someone would speak, and they don't feel like one rhyme only existed to facilitate another. Sorry to do Glenn Slater dirty here, but my go-to example of this is, look, it's him, so handsome and refined and slim. From the Little Mermaid Broadway musical. Why does Ariel care that Prince Eric is slim? Slim clearly only existed there to facilitate it's him. And though this isn't the most egregious line ever, I use it because I have these fond memories of my vocal teacher ripping into this lyric. Like, I will never forget being 12 years old and singing this song and her just going, I fucking hate that lyric. She didn't say it like that though, she didn't swear, but that was the energy that she had inside. And I've probably cursed you guys now to see them everywhere, because you will start to notice which rhymes now only exist to facilitate its more talented twin, even in the Disney theatrical productions, which are generally very high quality. Now, I have an issue with the premise of some of the rhymes here, and we will talk about things like little girl by a wildwood later, but that is not the rhyme. Him and slim is a bad rhyme and an otherwise good premise of Ariel crushing on and admiring Eric. Here we have good rhymes that make sense, but bad premises. And to talk about the technical things that I like, there are some nice satisfying sounds and repetition in this song. I like how little and feeling are repeated here. I like stuck, story, the duh in day, daring, sharing, secret, stone. Wait a minute, I think I just realized, is daring and sharing supposed to be, I mean, I guess that would be kind of a sound as opposed to a rhyme, but I just realized that right now. So that's another one, I suppose. Daring, sharing, secrets, stone, braved, bitter, storm, snow, holding, hoping, like that's an especially nice one. And of course, waiting, wishing, wondering, will, someday, some way. Now, these things don't automatically make a song better, but they do help with the flow. We want the audience to lock in and, pun intended, go with the flow, and these things help with the flow while still feeling natural, which is very important. Like, we don't want to force alliteration or internal rhymes just to have it. They need to make sense, and all of this makes the song more redeemable to me. But there is still beef to be had. Content dictates form, form follows function is another fundamental. When you have multiple sections that function the same, they should all match each other structurally. Verses match other verses. And if you're done with the verses, that is when you make a new thing, like a pre-chorus or a chorus. If your meter goes off the rails, your audience will not be lulled into a sense of security or be able to lock in, and clarity is crucial for musical theater. When the audience correctly predicts what is coming next, they get a little dopamine hit, and that gets them further immersed into the story, instead of them going like, hi, I didn't hear that, what did they say, or what was that, that was weird. The structure between verse 1, verse 2, and verse 3 is a little bit confused. To start at the top, think about how nice little girl at a lonely well flows compared to another day where another just feels squished. When a line is shorter meter-wise, you can always take a breath to cheat it, but when something goes beyond what we have heard already, it sounds like it falls off. I would have done day by day she fades away and just cheat a breath rather than go this far over. Little girl at a lonely well. Day by day she fades away. Another day where, what sounds better to you? This is also more of a nitpick, but I don't know how I feel about day and away in our newest discovery, daring and sharing, rhyming with each other when this doesn't really happen in verse 1 or verse 3. This could have just been a more satisfying sound thing instead of an intentional rhyme. And in that case, I guess little and lonely could kind of qualify for that. But even though verse 3 has this try situation, what I'm saying is that there are 2 rhymes in this first line. That does not happen in this line or that line. This plays a part as to why verse 3 feels like such a downgrade, and it's especially disappointing considering that musically we're now getting into our like bard battle music. It's fine going from verse 1 to verse 2 because the song is supposed to be growing. So I don't mind if a verse 1 doesn't have all the same bells and whistles that a verse 2 has, because that gives it some momentum. But the verse 3 needs to have it. You can't have your best verse be squished in the middle, or it won't feel like the song is growing towards a climax. Now to move on to the closing lyrics, I don't mind the 7/7 down here because they are equal in relation to each other and also have an emotional reason for being shorter. But verse 1 and 3 are getting a little clunky. Going from 9 to 10 in cheating the breath on trapped was noticeable, but at least I can accept that more. However, but in the shadow the kingdom's caught in, somehow, fairness is long forgotten is way too egregious. I understand why they had to squish but in there, but language-wise, somehow is where this really falls apart and it makes it more noticeable that this is bullshit just to fill time. What do you mean somehow fairness is long forgotten? This tips into a storytelling problem, but you guys can hear about it now. It wasn't somehow. You know why. The queen knows the values that the kingdom was built on. She just said, fuck that. I don't want to do that shit. And now she's a power-hungry tyrant. It is not somehow. You know how. So this I can excuse not both being 10-10, but this needed to at least match verse 1. And we have a similar issue between pre-chorus 1 and pre-chorus 2. I like how the rhymes do not end perfectly here because that creates a fantastic sense of uncertainty, but why in the world did they do so? It doesn't even make them the same length meter-wise, and so why do it? Like, what was the reasoning? Why? Why not just have it be, will she rise or bow her head? Will she lead or just be led? Adding the extra so is so odd and it's unnecessary. I legitimately have no idea why they would do this other than like pop music just does this sometimes because they feel like it, but it sounds so much better to me without the extra so. The lyrics before were 8-8. We could have at least made this 7-7 so they match in relation to each other. In a similar way, I'm not sure how I feel about I'm waiting on a wish versus the shorter waiting on a wish because the I'm similar to another sounds squished in there. Because they're so close to each other, waiting on a wish sounds right and I'm waiting on a wish sounds wrong. I would have suggested a bit of a tempo change and done something like, I'm still waiting on a wish. And then that way, I'm still would be building to the more exciting phrase that the song is built around. Something else that bothers me is structurally what happens with water, daughter, behind me, find me, and then us going back to water and daughter again. When we go from one rhyme type to another, it feels like emotionally the song is evolving, and that's why earlier I don't mind the hold her, told her, and then alone stone. Because in that case, the single rhyme makes it sound like that Snow is getting more confident in the story she actually knows, right, about how she braved the bitter storm, versus the one that she's been told all her life by, I'm assuming, the queen. So this idea could have really worked here, but what ruins it is that this is a regression backwards, not a step forward. Again, Vivo versus YouTube. Choose who you want to believe, I guess. It's a bit confusing, but either the song ends abruptly, which is bad, or the song regresses, which is also bad. My suggestion would have been we can keep water and daughter, but maybe we should have had a rhyme here, like where learn and beyond are. That sort of book ending would make it feel like, okay, we've heard this rhyme before, but now there's a sureness as she's starting the sentence. But that doesn't really fix everything for me because there is a bigger storytelling issue going on here and you guys can have one of them early as a treat because it came up as I was considering how would I fix the lyrics feeling like they are regressing. And that's when it hit me that the reason why none of this is working as well as it could be is because the verses are not setting up the most fulfilling conclusions. Think about if the song went like this instead. The sentiment in pre-chorus 2 about will she lead or just be led makes more sense after singing about what? That she never dares to disobey. The sentiment in chorus 2 being leave these walls behind me makes more sense after we sang about what? Being trapped within the walls. The sections where she talks about her father would have made more sense after verse 3, where she's talking about how the moral virtue the crown believed in or stood for is becoming lost because of the shadow over the kingdom, the queen. A song is made out of building blocks, and the verses lay the foundation, the status quo, that is supposed to lead into the dream that the character has in the chorus. But where the verses are placed in the original song are not planting the right seeds for the pre-chorus or chorus payoff. It also would have made more sense in terms of the arc of the composition. Think about it. In the song that we got, in the first chorus, there's this very light, intimate sound. Leave the walls behind me as a premise sounds better when paired with that whimsical, secretive instrumentation, whereas the heroic brass fits better when she's singing about being a princess, when she's singing about becoming her father's daughter who braved the storm. And you'll notice that my change makes the post-chorus make more sense, because she is talking about part of me I've yet to find. Where would she find it? Out there, like beyond the walls. Whereas part of me I've had to hide makes more sense if she talks about braving the storm in her father first. Because we go from, will I find it out there? No, I braved the storm once. That girl is within me. I've had to hide her from the queen all this time. The girl she needs to be is within her. That makes the most sense to find out after talking about the experience that would make her realize that. I have been doing this for a little over a year now, but this has to be one of the most baffling things that we have found yet, because it's such a basic thing that should have been cut during revision. And that would also fix our issue of behind me, find me. Because instead of that being sandwiched in the middle, now we would go from that more, I guess you could say, unsure rhyme to the single one-word rhyme, and that has more strength and more sureness and more confidence. And then it wouldn't bother me when it repeats in the bridge anymore, because the idea would be, no, it's not beyond the walls, I have it, it's inside of my heart. Moving on to the bridge, meter issues are also why I'm not the biggest fan of they say all you have to do, because it seems like it's rushing again. I'm also annoyed that they used echo twice. The song has been used in promotional material and stuff, and sometimes it's been cut in a weird way, and so when I heard this and it was a bit muffled, I thought it was going to be all you have to do to make your wish come true is let it go. I wonder if we even need they say, because you can convey that through acting, like she's quoting the stories that she's read all her life. But back to the rhyme that I had misheard, I really liked that because I thought it was interesting for the themes of the story, and the missed opportunity here makes me so mad. When you throw a coin into a fountain or you use a wishing well, you are letting your wish go. You are putting it in the hands of fate. If Snow White said that here instead of using echo twice, what they could have done was make her revelation be she doesn't want to let her wish go. She wants to be the one who makes it come true and changes the way things are. I also thought, wow, this would have been perfect for Asha and Wish instead of the song that we got, because Magnifico says to let the wishes go, whereas she thinks people should keep them. But anyway, why did they use echo twice? Sort of still on the topic of misheard lyrics, but because a lot of the teasers cut it after clear, what I was expecting was something like, and I hear it calling far away from here, or something like that. Like the premise that there's something outside of the walls that is tugging at her. But this is where we get into language and the massive storytelling problems. If you've enjoyed this video so far though, thank you for caring. Bestowing a like on this video, or leaving a comment, or sharing it with a friend helps to tell YouTube that you think that more people should see my channel. But this is where I also encourage you to check out becoming a patron on Patreon or a YouTube membership member. Not only do you get to support these videos and my future original song releases, but you'll also get early access to my videos and have your say about what I make next. I would absolutely love to release a rewritten version of this song with new lyrics and new composition, but I can't do that without having the money to compensate a composer fairly. I've gotten messages sometimes with people offering to do it for free, but I just like morally don't feel right about that. I would like to pay people something, even if it's just a little bit. And so without any sponsorships, that's why I need to plug myself. But now we can talk all things storytelling. Now, when it comes to the lyrics, yes, there are some bangers, there are some parts which are really catchy, but we also have some really wonky misses here, and this impacts our endearment to Snow White as well as the overall story arc for the song. Technical proficiency can help to deliver a message, but the message is why we make music and why Disney songs feel so magical. So what is the message for this song? What journey do we go on here? We start pretty strongly here with the idea that Snow White's situation is chipping away at her, and that in combination with the visuals makes it feel like that she is the same as the stone wishing well, like she has been weathered by the harsh elements. But my problem goes back to the idea of the building blocks, and Moana 2's Beyond had this issue as well, where the blocks do not build to a fulfilling conclusion or revelation. We are introduced to the status quo of Snow White being trapped, so logically you would think that we would have the course about the dream to escape, but instead she sings about her father. That's why I suggested our little swapperoonie earlier, but that doesn't fix everything. Verse 3 in particular is the biggest culprit of what are you even talking about? Like I said, I didn't count this as a bad rhyme because I don't think that this existed just to rhyme good and wood together. I think that this is instead just a bad premise. If the woods were calling her to run away, that would be a good premise, but they do not. That's why I think it's bad premise over bad rhyme, because if they had a different premise, there are so many other things they could have done. Should, could, stood, and then would as in would you. This line could have told us something that was actually important, and it doesn't. And I don't even know if we need the idea of Snow White trying to be good despite her shitty circumstances, because we already know that from daring to disobey, and that's something the movie will show us through her actions. Somehow fairness is stupid because we all know how it's because of the Queen. If you wanted to change this, I guess you could do confined and kind, as in she tries to be someone kind instead of good, but I feel like that's unnecessary too because we have emphasized how she's trapped already. What makes more sense to me would be going from little girl to wicked queen in order to create some contrast and bring the conflict into the story. Because every I Want song has a conflict, and even for characters that are trapped, let's say Rapunzel, the conflict isn't I'm trapped, that's like the physical circumstance. The conflict comes from why we don't want to be trapped, and from Rapunzel's POV, it's my mother will not let me be independent, she will not let me grow up, and her mother is the variable that's in her way. I feel like this Snow White knows that the Queen is evil, so why even dance around it? The kingdom is not caught in a shadow, her stepmother is what is casting the shadow! So I would suggest Wicked Queen on a stolen throne with a heart set as hard as stone. And if we want to keep the interesting rhythm that the original song has, even though it's not perfect meter-wise, we can do, she proclaims that this world is rotten, my father's fairness is long forgotten. Going to pre-chorus 1, I don't even know if that's doing anything for us either. It doesn't go anywhere. Like when she says, is that a girl I'll ever know again? I expected her sometime during the song to be like, yes, just like I braved that storm. I have been braving the storm that is my life ever since my father died. I know that girl is me right now, but she never has that moment. And so this is useless. It's just to reiterate how she got her name, which probably happens through expositional dialogue anyway. So what are we doing? So I wonder for our rewrite if we should do something like this. My father told me through and through to stay fair and brave and true. Will the fearless girl he knew give in? Now, if I were getting paid the Disney money, I would work on all of this a little more, but something like this would have made more sense when talking about the Queen. It's not about the storm that you lived through in the past, it's about challenging the Queen in the present. This is what you need to do that you have not done. Where is the revelation that this is what you need to do? This brings us back to Course 2. It does not make any sense for us to repeat these lyrics and come to a different conclusion. I gave As the Silver Sky Stops a pass when it happened in verse 1 because at least that could have been, oh, she goes to the wishing well at this specific time of day because of the queen. She can only come here when the queen won't notice sort of thing. But what does her being beneath 1,000 treetops as the silver sky stops have to do with her longing to leave the walls? Like, do you only long to leave at this specific moment? I would have at least taken beyond instead of beneath because that could imply that the answer is out there somewhere. Even in relation to her sending the whisper to the water, like in this place where this wishing well is, it does not look like there are 1,000 treetops. It looks pretty bare. When the songwriters mention something that would be like a set piece, right? Like having 1,000 treetops, you either need to tell them no, or it becomes your responsibility to put in the treetops. What they also could have done was instead of having the well at the palace, they could have had it in the middle of the woods or something, like the woods that Snow White will inevitably have to run away from the queen into, because at least then it could have been like, hey, this is the only time I get to leave the palace. I go to my father and I's secret spot in the magical forest or whatever. Like instead it's in the castle and the castle's so ugly. Both times this is low-key a bit of nonsense, but it's more transparently bullshit in Course 2. We could have used this to create contrast, like instead of just saying the same thing again, what if she instead sung about the kingdom? We have nature and then we have like society, the kingdom, what she sees beyond the walls. And that would make more sense with what? Her singing about her father if we go with the reversed version that I talked about earlier. Now, when it comes to post-course 2, we have another case of lyrics feeling like we are going backward instead of forward. We started over here with forever, an eternity, a long time, and then we get over here and it's just another year. They should have done year after year. That would have shown the monotony and the frustration, like year after year I wish for this thing and it's still not happening. And that has higher stakes because it fits in with the idea of eternity instead of, just wait 1 year. Like 1 year is not a long time. Now I'm sure you're wondering, Cal, you've been pretty quiet about what happens after the Vivo cut, and that's because it is the perfect segue that leads us into this song's biggest failure. All my videos have a key lesson for the week where I reveal something that goes even deeper. Everything I've already talked about contributes to death by 1,000 cuts, but beyond the clunky meter and the poor word choices, there is a secret missing sauce here. Even though some of my issues are solved just by swapping placement, as I've shown you already, this has bigger problems. Every musical needs to have a thematic question, and the veterans of this channel will know that my favorite is who is the monster and who is the man in Hunchback evolving into what makes a monster and what makes a man. Everything in the movie, from the character design to the lighting to the environment to the plot to the body language to the music, contributes to this. For my Beyond video, I made this handy graphic showing how a song must not only contribute to the thematic question of the entire show, but must have its own question, and then the sections of that song contribute to all of those questions and have their own mini questions. We ask things like, if Quasimodo is safe, why does he want to leave? We get the answer, because he's hungry for the histories the townspeople will show him. Why? We keep asking why? Because Quasimodo wants love and acceptance. He wants someone to know him as intimately as he knows all of them. To be known is to be seen is to be known, whatever, all of that sort of stuff. But the song not only endears us to Quasimodo, but it also frames his ideology in comparison to Frollo, who would say that the world is evil and wicked, and all of that contributes to the thesis of the movie. Quasimodo's warmth, compared to Frollo's darkness, is key to answering that question of what makes a monster and what makes a man. And so out there is necessary in order to show us what makes a good man like Quasimodo. Even while performing a monologue or a solo, we are told in theater school to imagine that there is a scene partner and they are asking a question after every single one of our lines. Because if we don't have a scene partner, it is our other self that is provoking the questions. The conversations that we have between our heads and our hearts are what keeps us singing. But half the time in this song, the question that Snow White is posing does not go anywhere. Like, not only does it not lead to a revelation or a conclusion or a climax of any kind, it has no purpose. And the ending of this song, whether it's the Vivo version or the 5-minute YouTube version, is still baffling because of that. If the song ends at "I'm still waiting here," why? Why are you still waiting here? What was the point of this song if you're just going to accept that? If you haven't made a decision, you need to make a choice. You just wasted my time. But if the real ending is the ending in the movie, that still doesn't make it any better. She says she wants to be someone brave. Okay, someone no one needs to save, which that gave me the massive ick because you can tell like Disney's trying to be like, oh look, we girl bossified Snow White. She's strong and independent and she doesn't need a man. Yet, can't they see how ironic this is? She wants to be someone who saves herself. Great. Is she going to? No! She literally does not! She has no plan for how she's gonna do it by the time the song ends! I was expecting someone no one needs to save, so I'm gonna save myself, I'm gonna go out there, I will go the distance, whatever! And instead she just goes, oh, I wake up and it's just me again, guess I suck! Like, what the fuck was the point? And these questions, the questions of can I learn to be my father's daughter? That's a question that you should be asking at the beginning of the song, not at the end. Or at least if it comes in this late, it should lead to what I already suggested. Yes, I can be my father's daughter. Let's go outside. But no, this is the core of what she wants, to become her father's daughter, to take her kingdom back. But instead the song just goes, I don't know. I mean, she said she can't do it. Her wishes aren't coming true. I guess she's fucked. This has to be the most angry that I have ever been in any of my videos because, you know, Julia Michaels doing what she does. Yes, it's frustrating, but this is common fucking sense. I wrote a song very similar to this for my VTuber project. Soliana realizes that her wish is not going to be granted and the fates have been screwing with her this entire time for their own entertainment. But after the bridge that I wrote, she does not shrug and go, oh well. She decides to literally write her way out and give herself her own happy ending. Common sense would dictate that Snow White goes, I'm still waiting here. I'm not gonna wait anymore. I am gonna do X, Y, or Z. But instead they just have her trail off sadly. Oh yeah, my empowering girl boss who trails off sadly like every other Disney princess? And at least with a character like Ariel, she actually still goes through a story arc despite the sad trail off, right? We learn for the first time that this is not just some childish fascination that she's gonna grow out of. We hear that she is willing to make a sacrifice to make her dream come true, and that maturity did not exist when the song started. This isn't even about a character making plans. This is about a song transforming them so they are fundamentally different compared to where they started. This is actually quite shocking for such experienced songwriters to fuck up, especially when the fix is so obvious. Just have her go outside! It wasn't that hard! Because my VTuber project isn't out yet, I think that the best comparison would actually be Free from Barbie Princess and the Pauper. Annalise and Erica sing about the status quo, their responsibilities, their duty, and then their dreams of freedom in the chorus. And then, the bridge has the tension of, I could take flight, but would it be right? My conscience says to stay. The transformation comes from the decision to make their own path. They will do their duty while still following and believing in their dreams. It is their determination, their warmth, their hope that is endearing to us. If we are going with how I swapped them, the first half should have been the idea of running, while the second half should have been the idea of staying. The bridge should have been that tension of the decision, and then the ending should have been what she decides to do. But she does not decide, which shows how superficial this girl boss thing is, because it's only in these superficial ways, right? Oh, you know, we're gonna have her belt to show she's a girl boss, she doesn't need a man so she's a girl boss, the character's gonna dress differently and that makes her a girl boss, but having no agency is not very girl bossy at all. I would have even raised the stakes by having it so like Snow White is supposed to come of age, but the queen has heavily implied she is not going to let Snow White have a coronation. Her plan was to hold on to power forever, not just like, oh, I'll be queen until you're 18, Snow White, right? Snow White thought it would end one day when she grew up, but now she's finding out it's never gonna end. The queen was never gonna pass the baton to her, so she needs to fight. And you don't necessarily need to have the idea of running away if you don't want to. You can change it so there's the idea of she wants to leave the palace to understand her people better, to be a good princess. But either way, we need to lead to something where she makes a choice to stop holding out for someday and do something. And they just didn't do that. We either needed the conflict between leaving and staying, or a simpler idea of just deciding to go out there. But by the end of the song, I need you to make a choice. The Disney Villain Bible even talks about this, that characters that are passive suck basically because it makes the villains seem like they have a point. We don't like when people throw pity parties for themselves, and a lot of songwriters talk about this too, like as another fundamental, don't make a pity song, because we are endeared to people who fight for themselves. And what happens if you have a hero who never tries and a villain who is constantly trying is that the villain starts to look like the underdog. But why do I think this happened? It is no secret that this movie is at odds with itself. It wants all the brand recognition of the original animated Snow White, but also wants to radically change the story. And you guys know I love saying that fairy tales are meant to be retold. I don't have a problem with the changes, but the problem is changing things half-assed. The problem with replacing I'm Wishing with this song is that you're trying to give this character agency, but Snow White can't leave the palace because of the plot, because the queen needs to order the huntsman to take her into the woods and kill her. Now, the movie isn't out yet, but I'm operating under the assumption that Snow White is not going to sneak out after this song, or they, would have let the song end with that. It's going to be so much fucking worse if in a scene after this, Snow White's like, I'm gonna leave the palace because I'm gonna sit here baffled as to why the song ended this way. But I'm making an educated guess that because All Is Fair is happening after Waiting on a Wish, that they just need Snow White to sit around the palace until that scene happens. And this would put the songwriters in a tricky position because it is natural for the character to leave, to sneak out, right? Quasimodo, perfect example. But if the screenwriters are holding her hostage, you can't do that. Regardless, no matter what happens after this song scene-wise, the ending implies that she is just moping around, and so this song is completely pointless. Again, with Annalise and Erica, it's not like they resolve to go anywhere specifically, it's the emotional resolution. So even though I have a suspicion that the songwriters were railroaded, they can't use that as an excuse when she still could have made an emotional choice. I would have ended this song heroically and have Snow White sneak out of the palace, and the queen is so enraged that is why she sends the huntsman to kill her. It is not only the magic mirror, it's that the magic mirror shows her like, hey, Snow White's out there amongst the people, and now the people like her more than you. They wanted something more empowering than I'm Wishing, but at least I'm Wishing was crystal fucking clear about what Snow White wanted, and it made sense why she couldn't go out herself and find it. And it's also a duet, and so the duet resolves the song. But it makes no sense for the song to just end with a whimper and a shrug when it had such a powerful, defiant bridge. As you all know, Snow White getting transformed from a legit soprano to a belter was already a huge criticism of mine, and I talk about that in the intersection with femininity and all of that stuff, but I would have dealt with it if I finally had the Disney princess who's going to have the triumphant ending with the hunting horns and the battle drums and everything that the men get. Instead, they actually gave her one of the most passive Disney princess song endings of all time. Because at least when the other princesses trailed off sadly, there was an emotional choice. But here, there's no choice at all. And I am just so flabbergasted that this happened because it goes against everything they were trying to do with the empowerment of Snow White. But as my regular viewers know, because they watch the downfall of the Disney movie musical video, the songwriters at Disney are apparently not getting much say. They're just being told, song go here. But it is impossible to write a good musical functioning on song go here, because songs need to be so deeply intertwined with the plot and the characters that the story cannot function without it. So just like Moana 2 and Wish and some of the songs in Mufasa, we literally have the plot come to a screeching halt because the songwriters aren't allowed to actually let the song transform the characters. It's not a collaborative process where the songs are written and then the screenwriters go back and rewrite things to account for how the character transformed through song, like Disney used to do. And this is, I think, Disney's biggest problem right now. The pipeline is not conducive to making a good musical. But if you're a veteran of the channel by now, you've probably seen that video already. So instead, check out this video about Free from Barbie, the Princess and the Pauper. I did mention it in this video, and it is genius, and so if you want to hear about how that song does this 10 times better than Disney did, while juggling two characters, be sure to check it out. This has been Calxiyn caring way too much, and I hope that now you care too. I will see you guys next time. Bye!